The wind off the sea was softer than Kate had imagined, carried the smell of salt and flowers. Clean, wild, almost sweet, as if the island itself was welcoming her. But the warmth of that first impression quickly faded when she looked down at her phone. No signal, no battery, no clue what to do next. Seriously? She muttered under her breath. The black screen of her phone reflected her own. Anxious face, big brown eyes, full lips, her long braids slightly tangled from the humid air. This cannot be happening. It had already been the longest day of her life. Her flight from Atlanta had been delayed twice, then rerouted through Tokyo. Her checked luggage, the one that held everything, had somehow not made it past customs. And now, after finally landing on Jeju Island, all she had was her carry-on, her purse, and a dying phone that gave up the ghost just as she stepped out of the tiny regional airport. Kate let out a breath and tried to laugh. Welcome to Korea, Kate. Great start. Around her, Jeju International buzzed with life. Tourists snapped selfies under palm trees, buses pulled up in quick bursts, and locals hurried past, speaking a melody of Korean words she could barely recognize. The air was cooler here than Seoul, brushed by the sea, but still held a hint of late summer heat. Her plan, if you could call it that, had been simple. Take a taxi to the small guesthouse she'd booked online, shower, sleep, and start exploring in the morning. But without a working phone or Wi-Fi, she couldn't pull up the address. And the paper where she'd written it down? That was in her missing suitcase. She hugged her backpack to her chest, feeling the first true twinge of panic. She was alone in a foreign country, not sure where to go. Okay, she whispered, forcing herself to stay calm. You've got this. Just ask someone for help. That sounded easy enough, until she realized she didn't even know how to ask. She'd practiced a few Korean phrases back in Atlanta, but her pronunciation was questionable at best. Still, she squared her shoulders, scanning the crowd for someone who looked friendly. That's when she saw him. He was standing off to the side of the taxi line, hands in his pockets, looking at something on his phone. Tall, broad-shouldered, maybe mid-20s. His hair was dark and a little messy, swept back from his forehead like he didn't care but somehow made it look perfect. He wore a loose white shirt, faded jeans, and sneakers, simple, but there was something about the way he carried himself that drew her in. Okay, Kate. He looks nice enough, she murmured. Just ask for directions. You're not going to die. She adjusted the strap of her backpack and walked toward him. Her heart thumped harder with each step. Excuse me? She said softly, her American accent rounding out the words. He looked up. For a heartbeat, everything stilled. His eyes, dark brown, deep and sharp, met hers. And in that single glance, the rest of the world fell away. His expression shifted from mild distraction to something else entirely. Surprise, curiosity, maybe even a flicker of awe. Yes, he answered, his voice low and smooth, tinged with the melodic rhythm of Korean speech. Kate swallowed, trying to keep her nerves in check. Hi. I'm sorry, I just got here, and my phone died, and I can't find the address to my hotel. Could you maybe help me figure out how to get to? She stopped, realizing she didn't even remember the name of the place. He tilted his head slightly, trying to catch her words. Hotel? You need help. His English wasn't perfect, but it was more than enough. Yes, please, she said quickly, relief flooding through her. I'm kind of stranded right now. He smiled faintly, a small, amused curve of his lips that made her pulse skip. Okay, we can find. He gestured toward the terminal. Come, Wi-Fi inside. Maybe you remember name. Kate nodded gratefully. Thank you so much. You're a lifesaver. As they walked back into the terminal, Kate couldn't help sneaking glances at him. There was something effortlessly calm about the way he moved, as though nothing could really rattle him. Yet there was also a quiet warmth in his eyes whenever he looked at her, as if he found her situation more endearing than troublesome. Inside, He guided her to a seating area near a cafe and pointed to a charging station. Phone. Yeah, it's dead, she admitted. Totally dead. He nodded and handed her a small portable charger from his bag. Try this. She blinked. Oh my gosh, are you serious? That's so kind, thank you. As she plugged her phone in, the screen flickered to life. He sat beside her, scrolling through his own device while she tried to connect to Wi-Fi. After a moment, she turned to him. I'm Kate, by the way. He looked up and smiled. Kang Min. Kang Min, she repeated slowly, trying to pronounce it correctly. That's a really nice name. He chuckled softly. Thank you. Kate? From America? Yeah. Atlanta, she said, smiling back. First time in Korea. This a little overwhelming. He nodded. Jeju is good place. Better than Seoul for first time. Yeah, it's beautiful, she said, glancing out the window at the palm trees swaying in the distance. I just didn't think I'd start my trip by getting stranded. He gave a small, sympathetic nod. Travel can be surprise. That made her laugh. A genuine, bright sound that caught him off guard. He found himself watching her more closely. The way her eyes sparkled when she smiled, the warmth in her voice, the slight nervousness that only made her seem more real. Kang Min had met countless women, models, heiresses, socialites, all polished to perfection. But this woman, sitting beside him in her simple jeans and travel-worn sneakers, was something else entirely. She wasn't pretending. She was just herself. And he liked that. After a few minutes, her phone finished booting up, but when she tried to open her email, she froze. Oh no! What is it? He asked. My reservation confirmation. It's gone. I must have deleted the email by accident. Can't even find the guest house name. He hesitated, then said, maybe you stay somewhere tonight. Fine tomorrow? Kate bit her lip. But where? I don't know any hotels here. And I don't want to. Don't worry, Kang Min said gently, standing up. I know place. Safe. Clean. You can rest. She blinked up at him, unsure. Wait. You mean like a hotel? Yes. My friend's place. Guest house. Near beach, he said. I can take you. For a moment, Kate hesitated. She barely knew him, this handsome stranger she'd met 10 minutes ago. But something about his steady gaze reassured her. He didn't seem like someone who would hurt her. And honestly, what choice did she have? Okay, she said finally. If you're sure it's not a bother. He smiled again, a slow, almost secret smile. No bother. Outside, the evening light painted the island in gold and pink. Kang Min led her to a sleek black SUV parked near the edge of the lot. Kate blinked when she saw it. Wow, she said. You drive this? He gave a little shrug. Borrowed. She climbed in, instantly sinking into the soft leather seat. The faint scent of cologne and sea breeze filled the air. As they drove along the coastal road, Kate pressed her face to the window, watching the ocean flash silver in the fading light. It's so beautiful, she murmured. Kang Min glanced sideways at her. Yes, but maybe not only ocean. She turned toward him, puzzled. What do you mean? He didn't answer, just smiled faintly and kept his eyes on the road. Something that she hadn't felt in a long time. When they reached the guest house, a quiet, modern building tucked between cliffs and palm trees, Kang Min helped her carry her bag inside. The owner, an older woman, greeted them warmly in Korean, and Kang Min spoke to her with easy familiarity. Within minutes, Kate had a cozy room overlooking the ocean. Thank you, she said as she turned back to him. Really, Kang Min, I don't know what I would have done without you. He looked at her for a long moment before replying softly, maybe fate wanted us to meet. Her breath caught. Fate. He nodded. Sometimes, good things happen when plans go wrong. Their eyes met. His deep and unreadable, hers wide with surprise, and for an instant, the air between them seemed to hum with something invisible and new. Kate felt her pulse quicken. Maybe you're right. He gave a small, almost shy smile, then stepped back toward the door. Rest. I see you. Tomorrow. Okay. Tomorrow. I show you Jeju, he said simply. Tour guide. She laughed softly. You don't have to. I want to. And before she could say anything else, he gave a little bow and left, the door closing gently. Behind him, Kate stood there, still and breathless. She walked to the window, looking out at the sea now, dark under the moonlight. Somewhere deep inside, she knew that this wasn't just luck. Something about that meeting, the way he'd appeared at exactly the right moment, felt like the beginning of something she couldn't quite explain. She smiled to herself and whispered, Maybe fate, huh? Outside, down the quiet path, Kang Min lingered near his car, looking up at her lit window. His chest tightened with a feeling he hadn't expected. He'd come to Jeju to escape, to hide from the chaos of his wealthy family, the suffocating expectations of being Kang Min Jun, heir to the Kang Group empire. Here he was just Kang Min, a traveler. But tonight, he'd found something he hadn't known he was looking for. As the waves crashed softly in the distance, he smiled and whispered to himself in Korean. It feels like destiny. When sunlight slipped through the thin white curtains, Kate stirred. The soft sound of waves, lapping against the rocks below, filled the room. For a moment, she forgot where she was. Then, she sat up, blinking in disbelief. The view from the window was breathtaking. The vast blue sea stretched endlessly before her, dotted with fishing boats gliding across the morning shimmer. The air carried a salty sweetness that reminded her she wasn't in Atlanta anymore. Jeju Island, she whispered, smiling as the memory of last night came flooding back. Her missed flight, the lost luggage, her phone dying, and then him, Kang Min. Just thinking his name made something warm flicker inside her chest. He'd been so calm, so unexpectedly kind. A stranger who had every reason to walk away, but instead stayed, helped, and made sure she was safe. He'd even said he'd see her today. Kate wasn't sure if he'd meant it, but part of her hoped he had. She got up and freshened herself in the small, neat bathroom. The guest house owner had left a tray of toast, fruit, and a cup of coffee outside her door, which made her smile. Everything about this place, the soft ocean breeze, the sound of the wind in the palm trees, felt strangely comforting. When she stepped outside, the morning sun warmed her face. The path down to the beach shimmered with dew. She was just about to sit on one of the benches overlooking the sea when she heard a familiar voice behind her. You wake up early, Kang Min said. Kate turned and almost laughed out loud. He was leaning casually against the wooden railing, wearing a loose black t-shirt and jeans, a small bag slung over his shoulder. The sunlight caught in his dark hair, and for a second, she forgot how to speak. Well, she said finally, grinning, I didn't exactly want to waste my first full day in Korea. Sleeping. He smiled. Slow, easy, and devastating. Good. Then we go. She blinked. Go. He nodded toward the road. I promised yesterday. I show you Jeju. Kate tilted her head, teasing. You were serious about that? He raised an eyebrow. You think I lie? She laughed, holding up her hands. No. I just didn't expect you to actually want to spend your day babysitting a lost tourist. He stepped closer, his expression unreadable but his tone gentle. Maybe I just like helping people. Or maybe, she countered playfully, you just don't have anything better to do. His lips curved into a grin. Maybe both. Something fluttered inside her again. That same quick, nervous warmth that made her fingers fidget. All right, she said, crossing her arms. Show me what you've got, Mr. Tour Guide. They started the morning with a drive along the coastal highway. The sea glittered under the sunlight, cliffs rising high and wild beside the road. Jeju's landscape was unlike anything Kate had ever seen. Part tropical, part volcanic, with bursts of orange tangerine trees and black lava fences lining the fields. Kang Min drove quietly at first, occasionally glancing at her through the rearview mirror. She was pressed against the window, watching everything with wide, fascinated eyes, and he found himself smiling without realizing it. "You like ocean?" he asked after a while. "I love it," she said, turning toward him. "Back home, I used to go to the beach all the time. But this," she gestured at the horizon, "this feels different, calmer, like the island has secrets." He nodded thoughtfully. "Jeju has many secrets. Maybe I show you one." "Really?" she said, intrigued. "Like what?" "You'll see." An hour later, they stopped near a narrow dirt road that disappeared into a grove of pine trees. The air here was cooler, filled with birdsong and the scent of wildflowers. "Come," he said, grabbing his small bag. They walked for a few minutes, the sound of crunching gravel beneath their shoes. Then, suddenly, the trees opened up to reveal a hidden cove, a crescent of pale sand tucked between black cliffs, the waves rolling in slow and soft. Kate's breath caught. "Oh my God! It's beautiful." Kang Min smiled. "Not many tourists come here. Locals call it Susong Bada, the whispering." "See, whispering." He nodded. "If you listen, you can hear sound from rocks. Like the ocean talks." Kate closed her eyes and listened. Sure enough, the breeze whistled through the narrow cliffs, creating a low, humming tone, like the sea was singing softly to itself. "That's incredible," she whispered. He watched her quietly, his gaze lingering on the way her braids shimmered in the sunlight, the way her skin glowed golden against the backdrop of blue and green. She looked like she belonged there, wild and beautiful and free. "Thank you," she said suddenly, turning toward him, "for bringing me here." He shrugged lightly. "It's better with company." She smiled, eyes bright. "So you come here a lot?" He hesitated. "Sometimes, when I want to think." "About what?" His gaze drifted toward the horizon. "About life, work, who I am." There was something in his voice, a shadow of seriousness that made Kate curious. She wanted to ask more, but something told her not to push. Instead, she sat down on the sand and patted the spot beside her. "Well, I can see why you come here to think," she said softly. "It's the kind of place that makes everything else seem small." He sat down beside her, close enough that their shoulders almost touched. Sat there, watching the waves crash gently over the rocks. Then Kate glanced sideways and smiled. "You know, if someone told me yesterday that I'd be sitting on a secret beach in Korea with a stranger, I'd have laughed in their face." He chuckled. "And now," she tilted her head, teasing, "now I'm just wondering if I should be worried." He looked at her, eyes glinting. "Are you?" "Not really," she admitted softly. "You don't feel like a stranger anymore." The words hung between them, light as the wind. His smile faded slightly, replaced by something deeper, a look that made her pulse quicken. "Maybe we met before," he said suddenly. Kate blinked. "Before? In another life?" He nodded, his gaze still locked on hers. "Maybe." She laughed gently, but there was a tremor in it, the kind that comes when laughter hides something else. "If that's true, you must have been just as mysterious then too." He smiled faintly. "And you? Probably just as beautiful." Her heart skipped. For a second, she forgot how to breathe. The waves rolled in again, slower this time. The world around them felt suspended, caught between silence and the rhythm of the sea. Kate looked away, trying to steady her breath. "You're kind of full of surprises, you know, that?" He tilted his head. "Good surprise or bad?" "Good," she said softly. "Definitely good." They spent the rest of the day wandering across Jeju, hiking up a hill covered in yellow canola, flowers, eating spicy tteokbokki from a seaside stall, and laughing when a seagull nearly stole their ice cream. Kate couldn't remember the last time she'd felt so alive. There was something about Kang Min, the quiet steadiness of him, the way he listened, the way he seemed genuinely curious about her, that made her forget the chaos of the last few days. And yet, Beneath his calm, she could sense something hidden, a weight he carried quietly. She wanted to know what it was. That evening, as the sun began to set, they found themselves back on the same beach. The sky burned orange and rose. The air smelled of salt and night. Kate stood barefoot in the sand, letting the waves wash over her feet. Kang Min was a few steps away, watching her. "This place," she said softly, "feels like it's out of time." He walked closer, his voice quiet. "Maybe time stops here." She turned toward him, her heart thudding. "Then maybe we should stay." He smiled, that same slow, deep smile that made her knees feel weak. "Maybe we should." They stood there for a long moment, neither moving. The sky deepened into violet, and the first stars began to appear. Kang Min's hand brushed against hers, light as a whisper. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers curled softly around his. The warmth that passed between them was quiet but undeniable, a spark that neither of them could ignore anymore. "Kate," he said finally, his voice barely above the sound of the sea. She looked up. "Yes." He hesitated just for a moment, as if the next words carried a weight he wasn't sure he should share. But then he smiled gently instead and said, "I'm glad you got lost." She laughed, but there was a tremor of emotion in it. "Me too." The sea roared softly, the stars gleamed brighter, and for the first time in a long time, both of them felt something that didn't need translation, that quiet certainty that some meetings aren't accidents at all. The morning after their day along the coast began bright and clear, but by afternoon the island had changed its mood. A low wind rolled in from the sea, and the sky turned a bruised gray. Kate stood on the balcony of the guest house, watching palm trees bend in the distance. The smell of rain was sharp in the air. She wrapped her borrowed cardigan tighter around her shoulders and smiled to herself. 2 days ago, she'd been stranded and lost. Now, she was standing on a balcony in Jeju with the memory of Kang Min's hand in hers still burning like a secret. She couldn't explain it, how quickly he had begun to feel familiar. Maybe it was his gentleness, or the quiet way he looked at her, like she was something rare. Whatever it was, it scared her a little because it felt real. Her phone buzzed. A message lit the screen. "Kang Min, are you ready for one more adventure?" "Kate, always." "Kang Min, bring an umbrella. The weather looks angry." She laughed softly. Angry was one word for it. The horizon had vanished behind a wall of rolling clouds. They met an hour later outside the guest house. Kang Min was already there, leaning against his SUV, umbrella in hand. He looked half casual, half cinematic, hair slightly damp from the drizzle, black jacket zipped up, eyes bright even under the dim sky. "You sure this is a good idea?" Kate asked, eyeing the thickening rain. "Best time to see the island," he said with a grin. "Everyone hides inside. We get it all to ourselves." "You're crazy." "Maybe," he said, opening the passenger door for her. "But you're here, so maybe you are too." She laughed as she climbed in. "Maybe I am." The rain came harder as they drove south toward the mountain roads. The wipers worked furiously, the world outside blurring into streaks of green and gray. Yet inside the car there was warmth, the low hum of music, the faint scent of coffee from the thermos between them. Kate glanced sideways. "So, do you do this a lot? Rescue tourists and show them secret beaches?" He smiled without looking away from the road. "Only once." "Lucky me," she murmured. Something flickered in his eyes, but he said nothing. They reached a small lookout where the ocean crashed violently below the cliffs. The view was wild, untamed, the kind of beauty that felt alive. But the rain had turned into a full storm now, wind whipping against them as soon as they stepped outside. "Okay, this was a terrible idea," Kate shouted over the wind, laughing. Kang Min's hair was already soaked. "Maybe we wait it out," he yelled back, pointing toward a small wooden shelter just off the road. They ran for it, splashing through puddles until they stumbled under the roof, breathless and dripping. Kate doubled over, laughing. We're so wet. Sorry, he said, catching his breath. I didn't think it would be this bad. Are you kidding? This is amazing, she said, brushing water from her face. Her eyes sparkled. It feels like a movie scene, he chuckled. Then maybe I'm the bad director. Not at all, she said softly. You're doing great. For a moment, they simply stood there, the storm roaring around them. The rain pounded the roof, thunder rolling somewhere far across the sea. Kang Min rummaged through his bag and pulled out a small thermos and 2 paper cups. Hot tea. For emergencies. She accepted one gratefully, her fingers brushing his. The contact was brief but sent a small current up her arm. Thank you, she said. He smiled. You're welcome, Kate. Hearing her name in his low, accented voice made something twist gently inside her. They sipped their tea in silence, watching sheets of rain blur the world into silver and shadow. This is kind of perfect, she whispered after a while. He glanced at her. Perfect. Yeah. Not the plan. Not the weather, just this. She gestured to the storm. It's wild and unpredictable, but we're here, safe, together. I don't know. Feels honest. He looked at her for a long time before answering quietly. Honest is good. The storm raged on. Hours seemed to fold into each other. When darkness began to fall, the road outside had turned to shallow rivers. The small shelter wasn't safe to drive from, so Kang Min called his friend who owned a nearby cabin. A few short exchanges in rapid Korean and he hung up. He says we can stay there tonight. It's close. Safe. Kate nodded, trusting him completely. They dashed through the rain again, laughing, until the small wooden cabin appeared warm, light glowing from inside. Kang Min unlocked it with a spare key and ushered her in. The air smelled faintly of cedar and salt. There was a small living room, a low table, and one big window where the rain lashed against the glass. Kang Min found candles in a drawer and lit them when the power flickered. The soft golden light filled the room, gentle against the storm outside. Kate stood by the window, hugging herself. It's beautiful, she whispered. He looked at her. Her silhouette framed by candlelight, raindrops sparkling on her braids like tiny stars, and something inside him ached. Are you cold? He asked quietly. A little. He handed her a dry blanket from the couch. Their fingers brushed again, this time lingering. Thank you, she said softly. He nodded, his gaze never leaving her face. For a while, they just listened to the rain. It beat a steady rhythm on the roof, a heartbeat that seemed to echo between them. Kate turned toward him, her voice low. You never told me what brought you here, Kang Min. You said you come to Jeju to think about life and work. He hesitated, then exhaled slowly. My family owns a company. Very big. Everyone always watching, expecting. Sometimes I want to disappear. Her eyes softened. So you came here to be someone else? He nodded. Just Kang Min. Not the name everyone knows. She smiled gently. And you found a stranded tourist instead. He laughed quietly. Maybe fate again. The thunder rolled closer this time. The candles flickered. Kate stepped nearer to him, the space between them shrinking. Fate has good timing, she whispered. He looked down at her, his breath unsteady. Maybe too good. For a heartbeat, they stood there, close enough to feel each other's warmth, the storm, blurring the edges of the world outside. Kang Min raised a hand slowly, brushing a damp strand of hair from her cheek. She didn't move. Her eyes searched his, and in that fragile silence, everything that had been building since. The airport, the glances, the laughter, the quiet understanding, came together like two waves meeting. He leaned in, just enough that she could feel his breath against her skin. The world seemed to hold its breath with them. Then a flash of lightning lit the room, and the thunder cracked so loudly that she jumped. He laughed softly, stepping back just a little. Jeju doesn't want to share this moment, he said. She smiled, cheeks warm. Maybe it's protecting us from rushing. Maybe. They sat on the couch together after that, wrapped in the same blanket, talking in low voices, about Atlanta, about his favorite songs, about everything and nothing. The candlelight danced. Across their faces, the storm outside slowly easing into a gentle drizzle. When Kate's head finally leaned against his shoulder, he didn't move. He just looked down at her eyes half closed, the soft rhythm of her breathing blending with the rain. In that quiet, Kang Min felt something shift, a calm certainty he hadn't known he was looking for. He whispered, "Good night, Kate." She murmured back, barely awake, "Good night, Kang Min." And while the last of the thunder faded into the distance, the candles burned low, and the two of them drifted into a peace that felt like the beginning of something too tender to name. When Kate opened her eyes, the first thing she noticed was the quiet. No rain, no thunder, only the faint hiss of waves far away. For a long, drowsy moment she lay still, wrapped in the soft weight of a blanket that smelled faintly of cedar and salt. Memory came slowly. The shelter, the running, the candlelight, Kang Min's laughter somewhere, close beside her. She turned her head. He was still there. Kang Min sat at the low table near the window, hair tousled, a steaming mug between his hands. Morning light spilled over him, painting his profile in pale gold. The sight made her heartbeat trip over itself. "Morning," she said, voice rough from sleep. He looked up instantly and smiled. "Morning. You slept well." She stretched, sitting up and tucking the blanket around her shoulders. "Better than I expected. After surviving a tropical storm." He chuckled. "Jeju storms are dramatic but short. Like movies." Kate grinned. "And you're the director again? Maybe this time I'm the audience," he said softly. Something in his tone made her glance away, pretending to busy herself with her hair. The air between them had changed, still warm, still safe, but threaded with a new awareness neither of them could quite name. Kang Min poured her tea from the same thermos they'd used the night before. "Here, still warm." She took it carefully, fingers brushing his. "You're full of small miracles. You know that?" He tilted his head. "Only small ones?" The teasing made her laugh, breaking the tension just enough for both of them to breathe again. Outside, sunlight began to push through the mist, catching on the wet leaves and turning them silver. The world looked freshly made. They stepped out of the cabin a little later, shoes sinking into damp earth. The air was cool and clean, every scent sharpened by rain. Birds sang somewhere up in the pines. Kate drew a deep breath. "I can't believe how clear everything looks after a storm." "It's the island's way," Kang Min said, locking the door behind them. "It washes away and begins again." She smiled. "Maybe that's what I needed too." He met her eyes briefly, then nodded toward the car. "Breakfast. Lead the way." They stopped at a small seaside cafe halfway down the hill, a place with steamed windows, the smell of coffee and tangerines drifting through the open door. The owner recognized Kang Min immediately and greeted him warmly in Korean. Kate watched the easy exchange, the respectful bows, the way the old man clapped Kang Min on the shoulder as if they'd known each other for years. When they sat by the window with their toast and soup, she asked, "So, do you come here every time you visit?" "Sometimes," he said, stirring his coffee. "He used to work for my family's company a long time ago. Now he owns this place." "Your family's company again?" she said, curious. "You never did tell me what kind of company it is." He hesitated just long enough for her to notice. "It's complicated. Big. Many departments. Business, real estate, things like that." Kate raised an eyebrow. "So, you're the boss's son or something?" He smiled faintly, eyes still on his cup. "Something like that." She laughed. "You're so mysterious, Kang Min. It's not fair. I've told you everything about me. My hometown, my favorite cereal, even that embarrassing story about missing my flight, and you still talk like a spy." He looked up, his smile softening. "Maybe I just like hearing you talk." Her protest caught in her throat. For a moment, they simply looked at each other, the space between them humming again. Then the cafe door opened, and a gust of wind swept in, along with two men in tailored suits. They were out of place in the sleepy cafe, their polished shoes leaving no trace of mud. One of them spoke quickly to the owner, who nodded and pointed toward Kang Min's table. "Kang Min SSI?" the taller man said as he approached. Kate blinked. The tone was formal, the kind reserved for someone important. Kang Min froze for a split second before standing. "Hyun-suk," he said in Korean, surprise flickering across his face. "Your father has been trying to reach you," the man replied. Thank you for watching. Episode 1 ends here. Find out more about the story in episode 2 coming up soon. If you enjoyed the story, leave us a comment. Also like, share and subscribe to our channel, and click on the notification bell to get notified whenever a new story is made.